Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me. This is a lot of fun for me, to tell you the truth, because it brings together a lot of my personal interest into one space. So let's get started. So thanks again. My name is Mike Pell. I'm from the future. I'm here to tell you a little bit about what's going to happen next with something that I'm calling the Neuroverse, which you've been talking all day long, I'm sure, about, but the metaverse. And so for me, there's a new combination, sort of unification of some things that are happening all at once. And so I tend to describe that as the Neuroverse, or sort of like an underlying substrate layer that's going to help to power what's happening next with both business, metaverse, communication. So with that, let's sort of start from where we're going to be next. We are just about on the brink of being able to not only map what's actually happening with the brain, but be able to understand it, be able to manipulate it in some cases, be able to learn from it. So this is almost unimaginable a few years ago, that we are so close to being able to actually see people's thoughts, to see their emotions, to be able to get to the point where we can not only see them and understand them, but start to interpret them, start to maybe even predict or anticipate what could happen. This is something that we've been working on for quite some time, as you all know very well. But for me, as an experienced designer and someone who helps people communicate and to visualize information, this is the beginning of something amazing. Being able to see inside what someone is feeling or thinking is groundbreaking in every way. And so with everything happening now with spatial technologies and voice and sort of the internet and mobile computing evolving to the point where we now are on the brink of all being immersed in what people are calling the metaverse, the technology that you're most interested in is key to all of it. And I'll tell you why. But first, I always like to say, just tell me. Whenever I go to a conference or I'm listening to a presentation, I just want the speaker to tell me what the key point is so that I can pay attention to other things maybe. In my case, this ability to see emotions and feelings is going to change everything. And when I say see, I mean being able to actually interpret in a way that we understand, that makes something meaningful to us personally, to be able to see what people are thinking and feeling and hoping and wondering. That changes everything about our existence, about our relationships, about how we work, not only in business, but in our personal lives. So let me define a few things very quickly for you. And these are my definitions, and they're probably pretty much the same as yours, but let's just get on the same page really quickly. First, everybody's talking about the metaverse. The metaverse has really existed for about 30 years now in various forms. But just now have we sort of assigned this term to it. And really, for me, it's what a lot of people like leaders in the field have said, I'm sure, throughout the day today. The metaverse is really the next evolution of computing, where dynamic digital elements are fully integrated into our physical world. And physical elements, real things, objects, people, places, are integrated into the digital world. Simple, right? It's like things going both directions, digital to physical, physical to digital. The thing that I'm calling the Neuroverse is what I call a substrate universe, or a layer sort of underneath the metaverse that is completely intertwined and meshed with what's happening both in the real world and the metaverse, where our feelings and emotions and lots of sensory elements are surfaced, analyzed, reacted to, and even manipulated in some cases. So the Neuroverse is the realm where much of your work will exist. It's where sensors will pour their information. It's where data scientists will work to extract things. It's where psychological, evaluation, and analytics will be used to try to figure out exactly, is this what he was thinking? Is that what I'm feeling? We have to be able to map and make sense of all the things that we can record, because now we're entering into a new phase where we will combine these two things. So the metaverse and what I'm calling the Neuroverse, combined and meshed together, are going to offer completely new capabilities. And again, I don't have to tell you this. This is your business, right? This is what you're sort of focused on and what you're trying to make real. What I'm going to talk about today is something that I care a lot about, which is how do we see that? How do we visualize what I'm calling the Neuroverse? But first, I think we have to sort of understand where we're at in terms of both societal norms, technologies, and just what we've done with our technology over the last several decades. In my new book that I'm finishing up right now called Visualizing Business, I like to say that charts lie, graphs obscure, and data never tells the story. We tend to assign things the way that we see them. We all have our own biases. When we convey information, when we report facts, we tend to color it in a way that makes sense to us, maybe trying to be objective, but oftentimes carrying those things with us that we have to learn how to be more careful with. And one of the things that we can be sure of is that despite all of the technology we have to visualize and convey and communicate things, it's always people that make the difference, right? Like one of my favorite bands, the Eagles, would like to say, you can't hide your lying eyes. When you look in someone's face, you can tell a million things about them instantaneously. Their mood, what they mean, are they hiding something? Can they not hide something? What the intention was, what the feeling is. And that is at the very heart of what we have to do together. The cautionary part of this is that we need to be careful because we are dealing with people. We are dealing with humans. We're not avatars, and we're not robots, and we're not, faceless beings. We have feelings, and we need to be heard and understood. And with all this technology that we're developing together and trying to move forward, we need to be careful that it's centered about people. So with this, why was I invited to talk to you about this? Very quickly, I have a very long history in the tech industry, being on the very bleeding edge of many technologies, including, like the beginnings of personal computing. I was one of the inventors of Acrobat and PDF, worked in, 3D forever. I've been at Microsoft for the last 20 years working on very innovative projects. Have learned so much that I've written 2 books over the last several years about spatial technologies, mixed reality, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, and how it plays in with communications. And I'm finishing up a book now called Visualizing Business, which will define a new language, a new visual language for business that helps people to understand this very dynamic world that we live in. But maybe more importantly for you is that I work for a company, Microsoft, that's recently announced something called Microsoft Mesh for Teams, which is a platform that helps people to be able to collaborate in new ways. We're all tired of using, Teams and Zoom and every other video platform for the last 2 years. But there's something new that we've been working on as an infrastructure play, which is you can see the ability for avatars to exist within meetings as well as live people. To be able to, maybe you don't feel like going on camera today, you can have your avatar do it. It's something that will allow people to maybe feel like it's a more equitable situation for them, right? That was one of the things that came out in the pandemic, people not feeling like this, all of this online interaction and what maybe now could be called the metaverse was very suitable to the way that they wanted to be treated, the way that they wanted to work. And so Microsoft has been working hard to be able to allow people who are just using their phone or their laptop, or even a headset of some type, whether it's a mixed reality set like the HoloLens or virtual reality, augmented reality, to be able to participate and collaborate with people who are not there. And this ability to be able to see things in the real world that are digital, like we talked about the definition of the metaverse, like this is sort of, a good illustration of what I consider the metaverse, which is we're in the real world looking at something that's being digitally projected, either through optics or other means, and talking and interacting with people who are not there, but maybe they're in the terms of a physical photorealistic avatar, or even something, some other representation. But the fact is, we can be in the same place doing things together, both in the real world and the physical world. So that's one of the underlying technologies that you will be helping to light up and power going forward. So when we talk about visualizing the Neuroverse, What I'm talking about is going back to the beginning. Forever, people have been creating, lists and data and being able to try to understand their world, by analyzing, by communicating, by digging in, by being able to manipulate and change. Eventually, we got really great at this, and we're able to do things very, very quickly. We developed a visual language for being able to communicate data or information to other people. These basic charts and graphs have been around not just for decades, but for hundreds of years in some cases. We've sort of fallen into a pattern of being able to recognize things when they're put into certain forms. Not that this is the best way to do things, but it's been very accepted. And then we sort of evolved it recently to being able to be a bit more aesthetic, right? A bit more focused, a bit more pleasing. But this isn't the end, right? I mean, we have to push forward. If we're actually going to help people to visualize thoughts and feelings and be able to integrate those into what we were just talking about is this, workplace of the future, the metaverse, we have to do better. And what some people have chosen to do is to immediately leap from the past, dragging, the past into the future. We know that this is not how we're going to be able to effectively visualize emotion and thoughts, and patterns in the way that are going to make sense to people. We can't just drag our charts and graphs into this future with us to be able to visualize this neuroverse. It's just not going to work. We have to think about new ways. It's such a complicated problem, right? There are so many facets to this. And again, I don't need to tell you this. This is a field that you work in every day. But there's something that we haven't been able to get to yet. When you want to be able to really make a connection with someone, go back to what I said earlier about looking at their face, look in their eyes. You can feel, as a human, we're very hardwired to be able to feel emotion. We're very good at picking up on small things. So representing all of these things to help power, to assist in meetings, can't just come down to charts and graphs and numbers in the way that we've always done things in the past. They're going to have to evolve. And that the way that they're going to evolve may start to look a little bit more like what you may see as a mapping, of whether it's like, electrical patterns or, the way that the brain happens to work, in its mechanical, electromechanical way, or it could be interpreted perhaps a bit more artistically, which is sort of where I come in. As a designer, and a technologist both, I tend to want to integrate both great clarity with aesthetics. And so when I think about how to visualize people's thoughts and feelings and how we're interacting in our relationships, it's not black and white. It's not charts and graphs. It's not just numbers. There's an expression. There's emotion involved in this. And in order to do that, we're going to have to find new ways to visually and conceptually express that. So again, we have all seen these types of, spaghetti types of network charts, and also brain mappings. I'm saying, maybe we need to go a bit further, into the art side of things to really find a way to make that emotional connection. It may turn out to look like something that's physical. Like it could look exactly like a physical object. It could be in our clothing, right? I'm tending to use a bunch of different colors to represent feelings and emotion in these examples. But just imagine, for yourselves, if your clothing, if your garments could actually reflect your thoughts and feelings, what would that be like? So this is the exploration that we need to start doing together to be able to show your work off in new and interesting ways. And then finally, what if you could directly map thoughts and feelings and emotions and how people are truly trying to understand their world? What if we can map that directly onto people, whether that's through projection or advanced optics, or even things that we haven't even thought of yet? There's something that we have to invent that's a new visual language for being able to visualize thoughts and emotions in a way that we never have. Maybe the closest thing we've come to that so far is like emoticons, or emojis for that matter. And so when we start to go forward and think about all the things we have to do together, let's start with emotions at work, right? We're all using Microsoft Teams right now to look at this. And so one of the experiments I did about a year ago during the middle of the pandemic was work with a company here in the States called Steelcase, makes very high-end office furniture. And we started to talk about the future of the work environment where maybe people are not returning to the office. How could you sort of tell what people's feelings were about working in their current situation? Microsoft introduced technology called the Cognitive Services Toolkit that allows us, through looking at, through the camera, through, changes in your voice, to detect roughly emotion. And so we use that technology in this particular example to sort of illustrate how a meeting may help, the meeting software itself may help you to understand the feeling of the people in the room, even though they're not in the same room. And so that's like a really interesting example to go forward. Another one is using people's environments to actually be able to map their emotions. So let's see if I can show you a quick preview of this. I'm going to go back here. This might be a little bit difficult to do with in presenter mode. This will start in just a second. This is a great example that was done several years ago of using projection technology to be able to map what I consider the future of work, being able to use our environments to not only communicate information, but emotion and feeling. So that was a great example for me of how to map emotion and thoughts and feelings, not only onto yourself, but into the environment. The next thing I want to show you is an amazing example of how to visualize emotion in something that we're doing now. We're talking, we're having a conversation of sorts. This is a brilliant piece of design work that I want you to pay close attention to. When the participants are talking, look at the color and the shape of their discussion.
I was wondering if you could come see me today?
See you? Sure. Is everything okay? Hey, babe.
Hey, so how's life? Sarah?
Daddy!
How's my little girl?
Mommy's crying in her room. She said you were on a trip and that we might not see you for a long time.
What? There's things we can't explain. What are you saying?
I just heard the weirdest noise outside my window. It's all in your head.
You think I'm making this all up?
Oh my God, I can't with me. Please stay on the phone with me.
Can you hear the words I'm saying right now? Do not come here.
Listen to me.
So that's an example that was done for Apple TV of a show called Calls. But the key point was that was a brilliant example of visualizing emotion, just like we'll find with the Neuroverse powering part of the metaverse, right? We're having conversations just like we are now, but being able to see, and in some cases feel, parts of that conversation that have before not been able to be visualized or seen in that way is really brilliant. So with play, we're going to need to develop a new visual language to be able to convey thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Some friends of mine developed this thing called the Halo several years back that's not only used for things like the Apple Watch to convey things about your health, but can also be used for gaming. So this shape, the halo, has different axes. It has different dimensions that can be programmed and changed in real time to help players understand, how they're doing, or to help other people to understand what a player is thinking. We can think about this in the same way that we introduced the notion of emotion into a Microsoft Teams meeting. You may be seeing things like this very soon that help us to understand more about the relationships and communication we're having with other people. Some of these dimensions that we use visually, are the speed, size, color, complexity, the wobble, the brightness. These things that the halo represent will be a new visual language that will help us to sort of really convey what's happening in the Neuroverse, what's happening, what's all that information we're collecting through sensors and analyzing and spitting back into the world in real time will be sort of done in this way. So very quickly, in working on all this, for several years now, I've developed a few principles I think that might help you to move forward. So a few principles for visualizing the Neuroverse. The first for me always is that clarity is the key. It comes in the form of insight and comes in the form of just getting to the point very quickly. I love beautiful things. I love the aesthetic and the design, of things in our world as sort of what makes us, enjoy things more than we would normally. But if you have to pick, you need to pick clarity. And with thoughts and emotion, that'll come into play in different ways. The motion, like I showed you some examples of things moving and changing and sort of morphing from one state to another very quickly. It's that motion for us as humans that unlocks our understanding of a situation. We're hardwired to interpret motion and color and size in certain ways. And in that way, that becomes one of our most powerful tools for visualizing the Neuroverse. The Neuroverse will come to us in a very cinematic way. Just like I showed you with that piece that showed someone interacting with their environment, or where people are seeing what they're feeling and thinking, it'll feel very cinematic. It'll feel like it's not just a chart and graph. It's not just a number and some colors. It's been put together in a way to help us tell a story, to help us engage, to help us feel what's really happening. When I talk about scale, in all of visualization, it's one of the things that we do the worst. Being able to compare two things is at the heart of any kind of data visualization or any kind of communication for a presentation you might be doing. And humans understand scale super well. What we're not very good at is understanding the scale and impact of things when we're talking with other people or interacting or working or playing with other people. Sometimes the scale, the impact of something we do is not very well conveyed. And it's an area that we need to do really well with when we're working in the Neuroverse. And finally, probably the key, you'll sort of think that this is funny, but the simplest explanation is often the best. Looking at someone's face is very telling, right? The way that someone's eyebrows move, the direction that their eyes are looking, how their mouth is positioned, just the way that their face contorts in certain situations, either happy or sad or angry or joyed or surprised. The face is really the key in many ways to being able to understand thought and emotion and feeling, and to be able to convey that in an understandable way. And finally, being completely immersed. You've been talking a lot today, I'm sure, about spatial technologies, whether it's augmented reality, mixed reality, virtual reality, some other reality we don't even know about yet. In order for the Neuroverse to really be fully integrated, intertwined, inseparable, and so valuable to the metaverse experience, we have to embrace integrating this deeply into every facet of what we're doing, into our talks, into our conversations, into the way that we interact with people. And so to end very quickly, the thing that's next is going to be being able to see people's thoughts. Having our thoughts and feelings captured as we're walking around in the world. And finally, being able to create physical manifestations of our thoughts and feelings that can convey to other people over time, things that maybe would have been passing and very transient in the past. And so hopefully that gave you a very quick idea of how we're all together going to be able to visualize the Neuroverse. If you have any questions, I would love to talk anytime. I'm not that hard to find. Thank you very much for paying attention. If there's any time, I'd love to answer a few questions. If not, I'm happy to do it online.
Thank you, Mike, very much for your fascinating presentation. And to be honest, from my point of view, for me, it's a lot of new thoughts and a lot of emotions, because we are now all together, we are developing the future, and how not to forget that we are human beings, that we have emotions, not only to be more efficient, but only not to forget about ourselves. And this is a question. Thank you very much for that. Guys, there is a great chance to ask a question, one of the best innovators in the world, and I will be happy if you have any questions. Yeah, please. Oh, we are starting from you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So thank you, Mike, for your presentation. The question comes from game dev industry, and the insight is that people are not yet ready for the picture-perfect avatars. Maybe this is a technology issue, maybe this is something else. So if you look at the games where there are human avatars, they are all like cartoonish, arcade style. So and they're not trying to achieve this picture-perfect design, because we are, as humans, we see the difference, even if it is a small one. We see the difference, and we don't like it if it is not real. So the question is it just the technology that is stopping us from having this perfect representation of us in the digital world, or is it something else, something more?
That's a great question. To try to paraphrase, is it technology that's, or the uncanny valley, as it's called sometimes? Is that the thing that's stopping widespread adoption of, avatars or virtual worlds? And my answer to that would be no, not at all. It's never technology. That's the problem. It's always on the people side of the equation. And you mentioned it, right? As people, we're very particular and very picky about what we feel is acceptable in certain situations. In a game, or in my spare time, I may love very cartoonish, avatar-y kinds of, even like manga-looking things. In business, maybe I want super photorealistic because I'm used to live video. So the problem, I believe, is on the design side of things, believe it or not on the technology side of things. We need to find a way to be able to be comfortable in whatever situation we're in. Like I talked at the very beginning about this notion of being able to be present in a collaboration, in a conference, in a meeting, in a conversation between you and someone else in a way that's comfortable for you and the other person at the same time. If you don't feel like turning on your camera, how do we represent you? Or how does the other person see you? That's not a technology problem. Like, we solved all the tech for the most part. We can have almost real-time photorealistic avatars that are getting pretty good. That's not the problem. We've been able to do cartoon avatars forever. That's not the problem. The problem is more from a human psychological design perspective. What is the right way to be able to get people comfortable? And I think it's different for everyone. So it's not an easy problem to solve, but I know that there's a lot of smart people that are trying to figure it out together. Can I just ask you, just really quickly, did anything that I talk about help? Like, was that useful at all to help frame your thinking about what's happening? Yeah?
Sorry, did you ask for everybody?
That's it, guys. Yes? Because we're out of time. Exactly.
Okay.
Actually. Okay, thank you, Mike. Thank you very much again.
Mike,
it was
thank you. Take care.
exciting
See you
presentation.
soon.
Yes.
Thank you very much, and see you very soon on the panel.
Applause, guys.
See you very soon. Thank you.